I'm happy to bring in Robert Herjavec, who's back with us on the program here on Market on Close. Robert, great to have you joining. Always appreciate your insight here. It seems like a very busy time for what you guys do at the Herjavec Group, but also what you do as a small business investor through Shark Tank. I want to start with the small business side, actually. What are the questions you're asking your investments right now during this crisis? What are the most important things?
Well, thanks for having me. I mean, it's been a really stressful time, and we're kind of getting into this new normal, but we've changed what we're asking our businesses. The first goal was really survival, in the sense of, regardless of how long this goes, do you have enough cash? And by cash, I mean liquid assets on the balance sheet in the bank to survive the downturn, whether it's a few weeks or a few months. And that's really been goal number one. We strongly believe in the government stimulus. We think it's a great program, but we also know it's big government. It's going to take a while to get to you. And as a founder or CEO, you've got to make sure that your business is going to survive however long that tunnel is before the light shows up.
How are they right now, these small businesses? How quickly are they getting the cash, and what hurdles are they running into? We saw that some of the banks and lenders last week, I think it was Wells Fargo and JP Morgan, said that they weren't quite ready to get the system up and running yet. And can you give us some insight on how that's going?
Yeah, there's been some bumps. The first part of your question is, we've been asking a lot of the small businesses out there that we see through Shark Tank and so on, how long can you survive without any net new incoming cash flow? And we think it's about 4 to 6 weeks for about 30 to 40% of small businesses before they hit a point where you can't recover that damage. The challenge with the program is it's a great program. I mean, we've gone through it, all the pages, it's fantastic. But like anything, like the unemployment, on Friday, you couldn't apply. We applied for one of our businesses in the first hour that you could with Bank of America, and they had already had 10,000 applications in that time frame. So I think it's going to take longer than we think to get that money out to some of those small businesses, and that worries us.
Robert, there's kind of a philosophical debate that's been happening in markets about whether or not too much assistance from the government, even before this crisis, keeping rates so low, was enabling weak businesses to thrive, zombie companies to exist despite cash flows that didn't line up with their indebtedness. As an investor who has now built a second career here through Shark Tank, taking chances to some degree on very small, just startup businesses in some instances, I know some are large too, but where do you fall on that? I mean, is this just a rough test for some people to figure out if they can make it through business cycles in general, or is this a specific event that nobody should have to go under for?
Yeah, this is a brutal trial by fire incident, and normally, I'm all about survival of the fittest. I'm all about let the strongest survive. If you're not prepared, bad on you kind of thing. And every entrepreneur knows you're in charge of your own destiny. Having said all that, nobody had ever seen an event like this coming. There is no business plan that called for zero revenue overnight. And that's what's happened to a lot of these small businesses. And I think this is one of those things that a lot of businesses are going to fail, who are strong, good businesses that weren't prepared, as well as, the normal bad businesses.
So right now, is there a specific place that's most exposed? We know the consumer, anything that has to do with going outside, typical activities, is getting hit the most. Are there other areas that are exposed that we're missing? What do you see as being most vulnerable? And or maybe now, hopefully the question is maybe what's most prone to bounce back? Or is there a light at the end of the tunnel you see?
Well, I do. First of all, I'm a very optimistic guy, and I went through some dark times when all of this happened, because as much as we saw this happening, we didn't foresee the depths of it. Entire industries going away. But in spite of all this, you've got to stay optimistic, because as a small business owner, the biggest thing you control is yourself and your attitude to it. So you've got to stay strong. You've got to stay resilient. There are no retail businesses anymore. There are only e-commerce businesses. Any business that requires foot traffic has stopped. Restaurants have stopped. I mean, I go out to my local restaurants and try to support them, and I get talking to the owners. And unless your business was designed for pickup or drive-through, you're not making enough money today. You're just basically doing it to bring some cash in. So all those businesses are in deep, deep trouble. Airlines are in deep trouble. Any form of transportation is in deep trouble. Any business that can't scale back its expenses is going to be in deep trouble. I think Uber is going to do fine because the bulk of their cost is the drivers. But if people aren't driving, they can survive a long time. And when we come back, businesses like Uber, which are fundamentally game-changing, will come back. Restaurants will come back. We are social creatures. We like to hang out. We like to have a glass of wine. We like to celebrate life's wins. We like to get together. Where I worry is things like air travel. Does somebody in the new world want to get on an airplane with 300 other people in that closed loop environment? I think it's going to be a long time until those businesses or hotels can prove that they're safe, they're virus free, and they've done testing. I think we're going to struggle to come back. It all depends what kind of testing is available.
What about cruise lines? There are some areas of this market that investors now are buying up credit default swaps on. I think there's bankruptcy risk. Is there going to be industry that doesn't exist on the other side?
Oh my gosh, I cannot imagine. I mean, I love cruises. I've gone on cruises before. I think it's tremendous entertainment value, but I cannot imagine, especially as this goes longer, somebody going on a cruise unless the cruise line can certify for me that their people are virus free. And I think this is where I see a little bit of optimism. You know, the FDA last week approved private labs for testing. The government does not have enough cycles to get us through this. And I think that we're going to see private testing labs. So when I go on a cruise, they'll have a certification or some kind of an ID for me where everybody on that cruise has been certified. That is the only way cruise lines come back.
That's a really interesting point. I hadn't heard that idea before. Robert, let's get into some of the specifics. That's your wheelhouse at the Herjavec Group. The latest story here on cybersecurity is with one of the most popular apps now that people are using. Zoom has taken off. Just give me your thoughts on Zoom. I believe we're using it right now with you. So you must like something about it. What about the risk and the breach to some extent? I mean, what do you think about the latest story here?
I love Zoom. We're using it right now. A lot of our corporate customers are using it. We don't think it's as secure as Teams, obviously, but Teams is a little more complicated to use, and most corporations have Teams. But whenever you get an app that's free and everybody adopts it, you're going to have some fundamental issues with it. I don't think Zoom is as insecure as people are making it because people aren't using the settings. You know, there are privacy settings in Zoom that you can click through to make it a little more secure. But, you know, everybody is rushing online in order to get and use it, and they're not going through those settings. I think if Zoom doesn't fix its problem really soon, it's going to be one of those stories that takes on a life of its own. Like you said earlier, schools have stopped using Zoom. How long until enterprises dictate that they're going to start blocking Zoom from their filters?
This is interesting, Robert. When you say that if they don't get on it, it could spiral into something bigger. Is this kind of one of those cases where a tech company has to take it upon themselves? Because your point here is people are getting on it so quickly, they're not going through all the settings and checking everything and doing due diligence on their own. This is, I mean, it's kind of like a Facebook analog to some extent, where now we actually we've pushed towards regulations where they can say, hey, here's the briefcase of information, you want to prove it, but companies now kind of have to do it themselves.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think that, hindsight's perfect too. I mean, if I was the CEO of Zoom, I would have forced people to click on certain security settings, but I'm a security guy. I'm sure they never foresaw this tremendous growth. And the funny thing is consumers don't really care about security until they care about security. And so it's really hard to get people to go through a few extra steps to be more secure unless it kind of bites them in the you-know-what. And that's what we're seeing. So I think Zoom, if it doesn't do something drastic in the next week or so, to change the security policy and its security settings and push that out to consumers, I think they're going to get some real backlash.
Yeah. Robert, what else is shining right now? We only got a few minutes left here before the closing bell, but given your watch here on cybersecurity and given that the entire world now is just overloading data, we saw from Microsoft that their cloud is like working overtime right now. Has any company shined to you that is really in this moment of kind of demonstrating one's value proposition? Is anybody really obviously doing a better job?
Yeah, we really like a lot of the companies that focus on endpoint security. So if you think about your point about cloud, today there is no such thing as a perimeter for a lot of companies. Everyone's working from home. And a lot of people working from home couldn't get secure devices because the government is taking a lot of those devices. So people might be dialing in from insecure devices. We love people that make a strong endpoint product. We like a company called CrowdStrike, which is very strong and a real market leader in that space. There's some private companies we work with. I think there's a lot of good endpoint customers. We really like Palo Alto as people move to remote access and working in that environment. And we also like data analytics companies that can be used for security. We really like Splunk. I think they're a well-run company that have a great offering. We like a company called Elastic, which is also a data engine. So we're seeing some strength in the market in some of those areas.
Robert, right now there's a question of whether or not we've all realized we don't need to go into work anymore. Last point to you before I let you go, is there going to be a reckoning for commercial real estate, or is that overblown?
Oh no, the commercial real estate market is brutal. I can only tell you on a micro level. I have 6 offices coming up for lease in the next 2 years. It's really making me think, why do I have 50,000 square feet in Toronto? Why do I have 20,000 square feet in LA? I think I need a presence, but it doesn't have to be as big. In the future, people will not come to your office. What they'll ask you is, how did you survive the Corona crisis? And if you can show people how you survived and you grew, that will be more valuable than a fancy office with a nice reception area and your name on the building.
All right, really good stuff. Robert, always a pleasure to talk with you. Appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
And walking us through what you guys are thinking right now. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Robert Shark on ABC's Shark Tank and founder and CEO at the Herjavec Group. Like that Emmy in the background, definitely in the top of the home for shots right now.